Okay, I'm going to go through a lot of stuff. It's probably going to be more info than you can synthesize in one day, particularly if you haven't sort of had me do this before. So that's fine. But I want to give you guys, I think one of the things that I learned from last year doing the tryouts is, I didn't sort of get my history. I started coaching the women in 2002 as a volunteer. Coached for a year and then came back and coached from 05 to 07. And then started back with the women in the fall of 11, and then was the head coach last year. I've been coaching for 12 years?
You look like
12 years or 13 years. I started coaching in 2000, so I guess it depends on when it starts. So I started coaching in 2000. I've coached all over the place. I've coached here. The reason I came to CRI in 2000 is I realized I really wanted to coach and had no idea what I was doing. I really realized I really have no idea what I'm doing wrong, much less what I'm doing right. So what I then did is I coached here in the summers. I coached at Skidmore College for a bit. Then I came back here full time in 05, coached the women and the junior guys. Then went to London for a year and coached a couple different places in London, coached in San Francisco for 3 years, and then came back in 11. And my full-time job is here. I do all the equipment and travel, and I work with the IRL program. And when there's one of those things that Bruce is like, who does that job? And it's usually me. Like, who puts that stuff on the website? So it's all that little stuff. Okay? So I'm going to go through a bunch of different stuff so you guys just get a sense of what's going on. We're going to sort of follow this up with some video in the classroom. We're going to sort of trade off here with the men. So they're going to get the room in about 15 minutes. So I'm going to sort of try and go through everything. So if you have questions that are sort of immediate and poignant, like ask them now. Otherwise, we'll have a little more opportunity when we're sort of sitting down in the classroom looking at video to look at them from there. Okay? The place is to set yourself up in the boat. So you're only going to touch the boat in 3 spots. So you're going to touch the boat on your footboard, on your seat, and on your handle. So making sure that you get set up right in those places is really, really important. So when you're putting your feet in, what you want to do in terms of moving your footboard back and forth is that we want to set you up so that at the catch, your hips are in line with the pin. So the center of my hip would be in line with the pin of my oarlock. Okay? So that way we're going to get everybody set up to a very similar point, as opposed to having some people way through the pin and some people behind the pin. So that'll really help to get your bodies all in a similar point. Now we can get a little more specific with that later, but that's a general good starting point of where to put yourself. Okay? So as I start at the catch, we want to have our outside fingers. We don't want to let our outside finger, our particular pinky, wrap off at any point. You want to keep that hand fully around. Okay? And one thing that I've always used as sort of a good marker of grip is if you stick your thumbs out, you should have about a fist width in between. Okay? So this would be a little too narrow, right? This would be way too narrow. This would be too wide. So about a fist width in between. Okay? And obviously, I know it depends on the handle size. Some people are comfortable being a little farther out just because the handle is a little bit less narrow. But if you get too narrow, it ends up giving you a really funky, weird shoulder position. You end up sort of fighting your own knees. So that about a fist width in between, and then you can just tuck the thumbs back under. Okay? So as you're on the drive, and there are some limitations on the Swingulator, like I can't dig. Like I'd love to show you how to dig, but you can't really dig on this. So when I'm on here, that means I'm sort of buried at the right height. So what we want is we want to have our wrists all the way from these knuckles to our shoulder in a straight line. Okay, so the middle knuckles, and I talk a lot about the middle knuckles of your finger, is really having the middle knuckles pointed towards the stern. Okay, particularly on the outside arm. Depending on how your body is built, your inside arm will be slightly different. We want to have the outside elbow as we drive pointing down to the water. So we don't ever turn it out here or sort of get on top of it here. We want to keep the point of your elbow pointed down to the water. Okay, so got my grip. Now, when I come up, when we talk about full compression, so full compression is vertical shins. Okay, so the ideal is that, and this is a flexibility thing, the ideal is that when you're at vertical shins, your heels are as close to flat on the footboard as possible. So part of that is an ankle flexibility thing, part of that is the foot stretcher angle. But if you can keep your heels down, now, so someone will ask the question is it more important to keep my heels down because I can only get to here with my heels down? I'd rather have your heels come up a little bit and get all the way to that vertical shin position rather than end up saying, well, my heels are down, but I'm only a 3/4 slide, because that's going to give you a lot less time in the water to work with. Okay? So we want to come up to where we are at vertical here. We don't want to come over. What's going to happen is if you use the little power profile thing on the monitor, you'll see as well that if you over compress, there's actually a little dip before you really pick up. So what we want to do is immediately when we're at vertical shins, we want the blade in the water, and we want to really be able to change direction right from there with power. Make sense so far? So the other piece is when you're sitting, we want to be sitting on the front of the seat. Okay, so there'll be a little bit of space behind you. There's those divots in the seats. So you want your two sit bones right in those divots. Okay, but you're keeping your weight more towards the front of the seat rather than, so now I've moved to the back of the seat, or now I've moved my hips in front of me. So you see how that's changed how my back, so now my back has a curve to it. If I sit on the front of the seat, I'm actually going to have a nice flat back from my shoulders all the way down to my hips. Okay? One thing particularly with women and how your hips are built is you actually have a bigger sort of, the front bone of your hip actually comes around a little more. So if you get into this position where your hips are underneath you, it actually makes it really hard to get body angular to take that stress off your lower back because just of the way your body's built. So it's really important that we sit on the seat appropriately, and you should, and you can try it a little bit, is if you sit like this, it actually, you can feel the tension sort of building in your lower back. And if you just swing your hips under you, it actually just releases that tension. Okay? So that's how we're sitting at the front. So far, so good? See, I told you I would overload you with information. Okay? So those are the places you're going to contact the boat. So as we go through the drive, we want to have as much of a full foot pressure as we can. So again, this comes back to if your heels are up a little bit, we want to get your heels down so that you can press off your full foot. And I always look to you, if you look at like world-class power lifters, if you ever watch them, they, as much full foot pressure as they had, and a lot of those guys actually wear like super high heel shoes. If you've ever looked at their shoes, they have like super high, because they're just not flexible enough, but they want to be able to get force on the ground from their full foot. So that's why they wear those big wedge shoes, because, not because they think being on their toes is more effective, it's because they're so like this, they can't actually, flexibility-wise, get their heel on the ground. So we want to try and get those heels down as quickly as we can so we're applying pressure against the full footboard. And we'll see in one of the videos in a bit, one of the things that'll sort of get talked about is pressing on the footboard and not necessarily pressing against a handle. Okay? So then what that's going to translate to in our hands is those middle knuckles, and you'll hear me say a lot, pulling through those middle knuckles. So as you go through, that you're really feeling the pressure through the middle of your fingers. If you start to feel the pressure, if you either sort of grip over like this and have a peak in your wrist, you'll feel the pressure in your fingertips. Or if you're really not holding onto the handle very tightly, if you're getting into the fingertips here, neither of which is going to make you super effective. So just if your hand is sort of a hook, you're just hooking it right over the top. Okay? So I'm pressing here for my feet, I'm hooking over the top, and my shoulders will stay down when I do that. Okay? If I start to lift up, and again, this is one of those things that's really hard to do here, but if I start to lift up and get pressure in my fingertips, it'll bring tension into my arm and shoulder on both sides. And we want to let that go. We want to try and drive the boat as horizontally as possible. Right? No one wants to row in a boat that does this in the water, because that's really unpleasant. So if you want your boat to go like this in the water, that's how when your blade's in, you want to be applying pressure. You want to be applying pressure on that straight line all the way through. Okay? And on the seat, we're going to try and keep our weight to the front of that seat as long as we can. Okay? So as you go through and as you're driving, pressing down, we're going to keep that same angle. So my body angle hasn't changed at all until we get right about to quarter slide. Okay, with the legs. So quarter slide with the legs, the body angle really hasn't changed, the arms haven't changed, we're just hanging on for the ride. So you actually spend a lot of time on the front of the seat in this position, where your body and arms are loose. So I can do this with my body and arms loose. I can do it really tight, but if we can save that energy for later when we really need it, just keep that body and arms loose. Okay? So at this position is when we start to really change. So this is about quarter slide through the drive. So we really want to try and keep leverage as much as we can until this position. So we're going to press, 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 and then as we get to here, the legs and the body are going to work together for the last quarter slide. Okay? So as I get to this quarter slide, my body and legs are going to swing together. So at about flat legs, I should be pretty much at vertical on the back, and we'll see that in the video in just a few minutes. Okay, so that gives you a sense of how quickly the back starts to open at that quarter slide. Okay, so if we're rowing straight arms and you're thinking about that, here's pretty much where I'm going to end up at vertical. My body is straight up and down and my legs are flat. Now that my legs are down, I'm going to continue that body swing to about 10 degrees past 90, so about, depending on how angle oriented you are, about 100 degrees on the layback. So you're not going to have a huge layback. We're not going way back here. And the checkpoint I always use, if you put your hand on your abs and you lean back and then you feel them engage, you want to come back just a little bit. Okay? So that you're not engaging your abs. Because what's going to happen is if you engage your abs, you're going to be working to engage your abs and trying to bring yourself back to the handle rather than being able to make power coming through the drive to a position where you don't have to sort of tense to hold that. Okay? So it's not a huge amount of layback, and particularly for the way our boats are rigged and the style that we row and the way women are built, there's not a huge, you're not going to create a huge amount of power here all of a sudden. Where you'll have power in the second half of the drive is from getting good momentum built here and then building on the momentum the rest of the way in. Okay? And then when we finish, we're going to pull in right into where our top two abs are in here. Okay? So I'm going to I'll go through it sort of at normal speed. Make sense? Okay. So now we're here, and then we take the blade out. And this is, again, where this is a little limiting because you can't really get a sense of, like, the gunnel height is all weird. So one of the things we do that's slightly different from a lot of people is we actually clear our hands down pretty low. And one of the reasons, so there's a couple reasons for this. One, it gives everybody a point where you know where that is. So we primarily have resolutes. We have one boat that has a wing, the Vespoli, which is a little different. But basically we want to be between an inch and a half off the gunnel. Okay? So when you tap down, that's actually going to be pretty low. So if you watch the angle of the oars, they're actually pretty high off the water. But that gives everybody a common reference point. So they know that this is where I need to be on the tap down. It looks, like I said, it looks a little funky on here. But that really gives everybody a point to identify where I want to be. So if the boat is to one side, the boat is on the other side, the boat is right in between, everybody knows where they're going to be. Okay, you're going to be that 1 inch off the gunnel. So you can stay, so it's not like, oh, the ports are down, like I've got to, like, you don't have to play that like trying to fix the boat as it moves. It's like, you know where that spot is, here's where I go, and I'm here, and then I just have to come up the slide from that point forward. Okay? So we're going to tap down, and we want to take the blade out square, and again, can't really see it here, but we want to come out of the water and then feather over, rather than sort of letting the blade get feathered out by the water. And again, we'll look at that a little bit on the video too. Okay? And part of that, the biggest part of getting the blade out square, is to be able to actually make power all the way to here. If we get to this point in the stroke and we're here and we start to tend down with the handle and the blade comes out of the water, you're going to be losing connection and you're not going to be able to take that blade out square. The water is going to be controlling you rather than you controlling what's happening in the boat at that point. So the longer we can stay connected on the drive here, the more you can actually be in charge of where the boat is and how the boat's going to perform. Okay? So we get to here, we tap down. So tapping down from the front pad of your hand. So tap down here from the front pad of the hand. We'll move the arms and body away together to quarter slide. So back to that same position. Okay? So there is some blending with the arms and body come away. So the arms will be about halfway out as the knees start to break. The key is that we've got all our stretch. So now we're tipping 10 degrees the other way. So we're going to 80 degrees. That we've got all of that by quarter slide. Okay? That everybody, and I like to call that the gathering point, that everybody's gathered by quarter slide. Okay? And so so from this point forward, all we do is compress. Okay? Now there's that whole piece of putting the blade in the water that we'll get to in just a second. But we want to make sure that everybody's established here, and this is really going to give us the ability to balance the boat. Particularly with the hands a little lower, it will make it a little more complicated initially to balance the boat. It is a little bit harder because your center of gravity on the oars is actually a little further away from the water as opposed to a little closer. Okay? So the things that another thing it will allow us to do by having the hands low is it sort of forces you to be aggressive taking the water. And we'll get to that in a second. So it really forces you to go after putting that blade in while you're still compressing. The other thing it does is in rough water, you don't ever have to change. Like you don't ever have to row differently. You just row the same and just put the blade in. If you have a raging headwind or a tailwind, it doesn't really make any difference. Okay? So far so good? Okay. So here I am. I finished my stroke. I've moved away by quarter slide. Again, so hands down. It's a little hard to do here, so I will admit that I'm not going to do it very well here, only because this thing wants to continue to pull my handle that way. Okay? So here I am, I'm down, and as I compress, okay, My arm is going to come in between my knees. We want to keep your knees rising straight up and down. So what we don't want to do is, as we come up, is sort of do one of these. You're like, oh, I've got all this room. Because what's going to happen is when you try to apply power on this foot, your foot's going to go like this and then roll in during the drive. Okay, so we want to just try and keep those knees straight up and down as we come through. Hands are down, and we're going to do, at 3/4 slide, a late but quick square. And again, no blade here, so it's a little funky, and into the water. So we want to make sure that we're getting fully covered with that blade while this motion is happening. So while I'm compressing, that the blade is fully covered. Okay, because what happens otherwise, and we'll see some good and bad examples of this in the video, is if I'm not fully covered here, when I start the drive, my legs are going to slip, and then I'll connect. And that'll happen to varying degrees. Some people will not connect till here. Okay, which means for a very different both power application, but also a really different ability to perform well in the water, right? I'm sure if you're like, okay, I'll row full slide, you row half slide, let's go for 1,000 meters. I think everyone would feel pretty confident that you're going to have a lot better chance if you're using your legs all the way up. So part of what we'll work on, and this is the hardest thing to do, is to be locked in right here at vertical shins. Okay. Like if you look at people at Worlds, it's this, they're trying to figure out the same thing, is getting locked in together at that vertical shins. Okay, so this is a really challenging piece, but the part of the key is that you really make the move to the water, and on here you want just a little bit of roll on the wheel. So if you watch the wheel on here, as I come in, I want to roll just a little bit because we've got to bury the blade, right? Your blade is about that big. So it doesn't bury instantaneously. So we want to get that blade in quickly. We don't want to sort of do a very slow, methodical lifting of the hands. We want that blade to get buried quickly and sharply, but it's not instantaneous. It's going to take a little bit to get it buried. So that's why we want to be getting fully buried while we're still compressing. And that's what translates here into just a little roll of the wheels. Okay? I'm not down here, so I haven't changed my body angle. I'm not trying to reach through. Because the first thing that happens if I'm down here is as I push on my feet, I sit up. Same thing's going to happen in the boat. If you're coming down and trying to get more reach here, I'd rather have you think about getting more reach on the slide. And what that means to me is that means getting your wheels towards your heels. Okay, so as I compress, if I have less space here, I'm actually going to be able to work more with my legs. If I reach my body forward, watch what happens to my seat as my body bends forward. Right, so I'm actually losing distance on the slide. So if I just let go and sit straight up, I'm already at 7/8 slide. And I haven't even put the blade in the water yet. So we really want to focus on staying tall. And this is also going to help keep the boat balanced. If we stay tall, keep the weight in the seat, and then change direction right here. So the weight stays down. If we're doing a lot of motion up here, either late, early, or moving it down or up really dramatically, in terms of the distance, that's really going to make the boat respond in the same way. And we want to let the boat really put in a lot of our work here, and then have that boat be really nice and firm and comfortable for us so that we can make this motion again at the catch end. Okay, so you want me to do a couple of strokes all the way through? Do a couple all the way through. Okay, so that's the general how it looks. Questions on any of that stuff? I'll talk through it a little bit more as we go in and hook up the video, but questions generally on how that looks, feels. It's all about pressure on the handle. It's all about the drive. Like, talk about like setting the boat up in the recovery. It's sort of about not screwing it up. Like if you put in the right inputs on the drive and put your hands in the right place in the recovery, the boat will set up for you. If you spend a lot of time trying to set up the recovery, it's usually you're not spending that energy setting up the drive. So we want to put the blade in and really make the boat move in the drive and worry a lot less about the recovery.
The concept I've always had trouble with is when you're coming up to the catch, the blade is getting in the water. Can you describe what your arms and your back do? Because obviously you need to have pressure there so the water doesn't grab the blade.
Yeah.
from?
So and that's what I was saying, when you want to get the blade covered as you recover, you want to get it, and that's why we do it really sharply, so that it's in, and so that so when I'm at vertical shins, my blade is already covered. I'm already ready to change direction. So here I am, I'm changing direction already. So I don't have to, here, right, I don't want to take the catch up here. I want to stay loose and keep that weight in my seat. And sort of as CT was talking about earlier, connecting in the lats. If we stay low, that connection's going to happen here. If I do this, the connection is going to move my center of gravity up. We want to keep that center of gravity low. Okay? All right, so let's go to the classroom. So I sent out this top video, and this is my former assistant coach when I was coaching out in San Francisco. So she rode for Cincinnati Juniors. So if any of you are Midwestern people, go Ohio. So she spent, it's like 11 or 12 minutes, and she spent it explaining the catch and did a pretty good job. She talks about some team-specific stuff in terms of like, hey, you guys row this way. That was talking about my previous team, but she does just a really good job of explaining it. I think she does it really simply. She does some funky stuff. Like at her finish, she does this, which is just really weird. So you'll, like CT was like, I just couldn't get over it. Like I was watching the video, she just does this. So she does some funky stuff, but she does a really good job of explaining how to put your blade in the water and what it means to connect at full slide. So I would encourage you to watch it if you haven't. It's worth watching her go through it. Yeah, so that one, so I won't do that one. I'll send out all these links after. So if you want to sort of rewatch them, because I know part of it is like my coach eye can see stuff really quickly. And if you're not used to watching rowing and used to doing it, that sometimes putting those two pieces together aren't always the easiest. So this boat, this lightweight 4 was a boat, and all of this video is post them qualifying for the national champions. The high school level, you have to qualify at regionals, and then you go to nationals. So the Southwest region where we were was really, so they actually, you'll see how bad they row in the first one. It's actually really funny. So they got silver, rowed poorly. But then you'll see over the progression of about 3 weeks of how they really progressed. So the first thing we're going to look at is AJ shooting her slide in 3-seat, and then we'll watch two seat and bow seat do a very similar thing. So, and again, this is after they had already qualified.
If you just go full screen,
I know, I'm trying to. It doesn't want to let me scroll over because it's got the different display.
I have a plan.
Anyone with some expertise want to help me out here?
Anytime.
you want to go full screen.
Oh, look at that. Go, Emily. Okay, so we'll start this over. So 3-seat is 3-seat is who we're looking at here. So these are all lightweights. So you just get a sense. So they row sort of high, and most of the video I think I pulled from here is all stuff at pressure, because a lot of funky stuff or ugly stuff comes out at pressure that you're like, oh well, I watched myself row by 4s and it was beautiful, and then it's like, and then we were all 8, and then I was 4 minutes into the 6-minute piece, and then you row really differently. So I really like to take video when you find out what it actually looks like for you when you're tired. Because most people look considerably better in the first minute of a 4-minute piece than they do at 3 minutes and 30 seconds in, which is normal. And so part of what you want to know is where am I going to break down and how do I prevent that? So we're watching 3-seat here, and what I want you to watch is watch the speed of her knees. So what you'll see is her knees will go quick and then slow down. And the reason they slow down is that's when she's connected. And this was like, we spent a long time trying to fix this. So this is early. So watch 3-seat, especially as we come around from the side. So see how fast her knees are, and then they slow down? Fast, and then slow down. So her blade isn't actually getting covered till about half slide. So that one's not so bad.
We can't see it.
There, that was quick.
Yeah, okay.
Can everybody see that's difference in speed in her knees here? I'll play it one more time.
Like in relation to everyone else too.
Yeah. So watch both the speed of her knees, but just watch. You can see this; they'll slow down when she gets low. So if you watch like bow seat, right? So bow seats, it's just easier to see the starboards. Like they're all doing it. Like none of them are really connecting very well. And this is the hardest thing to do. So okay, so you guys get a sense of who the other boat is. So there's this other boat who was training with them, who should have been faster. But so the other boat has stroke seat, Radcliffe. She was like a 740 at that point, 3-seat was a 710 at UVA. 2-seat was a 722 at URI, and bow seat is a lightweight. She's at Princeton now. She was a 735 as a lightweight. So they're going to be dusting this boat the whole time. You'll see. So they basically spent a couple weeks beating up on this other boat, which is just inherently very interesting that these little lightweights are beating up on them. Just because they weren't rowing super well together. So that's part of the difference in terms of rowing together as a crew. Oh, so here, okay, so this is them on a drill. This is, I think, one of the few ones I actually have on a drill. And you can see even here, watch bow seat's blade. See her blade sort of stop, move to the stern a little bit as it buries. So you can see she's not actually in the water when she starts pressing. So spend a couple strokes watching her blade, and then watch her legs. Play it again. And you can see 2-seat over compressing. So 2-seat's the shortest one in this boat by like 5 or 6 inches. Oh, no, I take that back. It's more like 3 inches.
Go 2-seat.
Yeah, 2-seat's like 5'2". 2-seat also goes like 731 or 2 as a lightweight.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll watch it one more time. So this one's really instructive because it really is isolating that first little piece. And you can see they're both like completely missing it. Their blades stop, and then they go in. They stop, and then they row in. As opposed to being in before they change direction off their feet. Okay, and that's really what we want. So I think this is really instructive because you'll see them in a minute be a little bit better. So we spent a lot, like we basically spent 4 weeks. We had a month in between. We basically spent a month fixing that little portion. Okay, so now we'll look at one more. So this one we're looking at 3-seat. So we're going to look at all the ways that people don't connect, and then we'll sort of go to the good stuff. So we're looking at 3-seat in this one, so in the white hat. So what I want you to watch with her is she misses a little bit of connection, and the way she reacts to it is you'll see her sort of tense up. So you'll watch her body go from here to basically vertical. So you'll see her sort of snap her shoulders back to essentially brace herself against the water and look for some balance. So you can see her shoulder, watch her, particularly her inside shoulder. So it tenses up and sort of grabs with the arms a little bit. So 3-seat here in the white. So you can see she ends up rowing almost straight up and down very, very quickly. And then if you...
What are they rowing at?
What?
What are they
Oh, they just did a start, so they were pretty high there.
Wait, now, who in that same boat was actually rowing well?
Well, let's go to another clip before we start to talk about that. So, so you'll all probably learn about me if I haven't coached you before. Is it takes a really long time for me to say nice things. Not that I don't think we're rowing well. It's just that I know sort of that we need to do a lot more things well. So don't think it's because I love these kids are great. Actually, Stroke Seat was just over for dinner the other night. I love these kids, but they just don't they just had a lot of things to work on. So I'm not being overly critical of them, but they just don't row very well. I mean, I coached these kids for 2 years, right? So it's not like they weren't better than when they started. There's still some things going on, and particularly, and this is the particulate high rate stuff. You get to see a lot of that stuff come out. Okay, so 3-seat again. So and you can watch her knees as they come around a little more. You can see the speed of her knees goes quick and then slows down. But it's good to just see how different people are reacting.
Is this the same boat as the first?
So the lightweight boat is on the other side. So this is the boat that was off in the distance before. So this is the different people. So these are all, so the bow's a lightweight and the other 3 are not. So we'll watch 2-seat and 4-seat in that same boat in this one. So 2-seat and 4-seat, so in the, you can't see 2-seat yet, but they'll do things in funky ways. Neither connects, but they both do it a little bit differently. What they both tend to do is they tend to sort of miss the legs, and then they get the legs, and then they don't stay connected through the swing. So they actually, and what I said I couldn't do out there was dig deep. They actually get the pressure into their fingertips a little bit. So they come up, and then you'll see them really jerk with the arms. So essentially their swing doesn't translate their legs to their arms. There's like this gap in the middle where you'll see them swing, and then you'll see them all of a sudden sort of jerk again, okay? She does actually end up in a pretty good position, but she just gets there in a disconnected way.
She likes sticking her neck out and her name goes.
Yeah, she does some funky stuff. So if you watch, so look, you can see legs and then swing. There's not really, it just looks like her arms all of a sudden get something different. And you can see 2 seats. You can see her seat go, and then the handle moves. The handle and seat don't move together. So if we're connected and the blade's in the water, your legs will be the driver and the handle will come right with it. Okay, so there'll be an immediate response from the handle. If you watch 2 seat again as this comes on again, you'll see the seat moves and then the handle moves.
Yeah. See the legs are down. Yeah, the legs are down. Yeah.
So bow seat's missing a lot too. Super strong kid, but getting her to be a little more savvy was a challenge.
Big way back too.
Yeah, big
But
just bouncing
Yeah,
over.
bouncy.
Is she laying back a little too much? More than your 10 degrees.
let's watch.
I know.
Yeah, so bow seat actually is about 5 inches shorter than everybody in this boat. So stroke seat is 6 foot even. 2 seat is like 6'1.5". 2 seat is like 5'8", 5'9", and then bow seat's like 5'3", 5'4".
God bless her.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a lot of like, hey, that was some not great stuff. So now we're gonna watch. So the style that I'm coaching you guys in is very similar to the British style. So this one's a little bit longer. The first guy you'll see on here is a guy named Zach Purchase. A lot of people, when it is about pressure on the handle. So I'm going to stop for a second. So it is about pressure on the handle, but that's the translation. Where you want to be applying pressure is on the stretcher and letting that translate to the handle. So your body is really the mechanism to let the feet and the pressure you're putting on the feet translate into the handle. Okay? So keep watching him. They lay back a little further. You can see he swings down a little bit. Not so much. It's different. It's a different style a little bit. It's also a different style in terms of how a double moves, a lightweight double particularly moves, than some sweep boats. But if you watch his legs, so these are different guys, not same guys, but you can still get the same sense of, they'll do some shots of the blades. So you can see the difference where we saw those blades before sort of stop and then drive in. You'll see these blades, they'll actually cover, chop, 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 and they're going to take a stroke. They're covered, and then they press. So you don't see the blades move to the stern. You see the paint covered before they change direction. So this is a really good perspective of the blades. That again, you don't see those blades sort of moving sternward. You see them go in and then change direction. So here they're rowing a little harder. Now they're rowing legs and back. And they pulled the arms there. So this is it from the same boat, stern perspective. So coxswains particularly, that's an interesting one for you. Here's these guys. Straight arms in the pair, square blade. And if you notice, the one thing I do like, if you look at their shoulders, they don't hunch up in the shoulders. Their shoulders stay loose. So that sort of will take us. Now it's not going to. We're not going to row as well as that. But now you can start to look at a little bit more of.
We inspire.
I think it's this one. Maybe it's this one.
We watch Meat Cookie.
So here's that same lightweight boat again. So this is, what's the date on this one? June 6th. So this is like one of the last 2 or 3 practices before we left. So this is them at pace now. So same kids. If you watch, so 3-seat still this. It got better, but it got like slightly better. If you look at 2-seat, so 2-seat and bow pair particularly actually made some pretty good improvements. It's easier to see 2-seat's knees, right? You don't see them as quick and then slow again. She's still over-compressing, not as badly, but you can see the difference. And you can see if you just, so we'll play it one more time. Watch the whole boat and watch how 3-seat sort of sticks out. Like, you just look at her rhythm and you'll see when she doesn't connect her, like, just look at the bodies, like, don't even look at the blades. You can see how she just is a little bit funky, and that's just because she's not applying power in the same way. She's just a little funky because she misses those legs, so she's got to try and get it with everybody else. So that's them at pace. So we'll watch another one of them at pace. So this is them going up. So this is the lightweights. This is that same boat going up against that same heavyweight boat who's in the far. So this is a little earlier. So you can see like 2-seat now, she's going up and down a little bit. So this is like, I think this is moving back a week and a half or so. And you can see the late reach from the whole port side here. See how the boat is down a little bit to the port side right before they put their blades in? The boat comes down. If you watch 2-seat and stroke seat shoulders, you'll see that their shoulders both move down right there. Stroke seat never really loses that. You'll see another video in a minute where she doesn't really lose that. But you can look and sort of see, like this is an in-between from where we were before to that last one. That one's a little hard to watch. But it's just like too close. Okay, so now this one is them sprinting. So this is the last, okay, so this is the last, is this the sprinting one? Yeah, I think it's the sprinting one. So this is the last 20 strokes or so. And you'll notice that they'll cut the back, and this is something that we'll talk about as we go, and I'll show you one in the start. But they're going to go from doing normal layback to going to straight up back, and you'll see, so it'll look a little funky about halfway through. You'll see the boat speed will actually pick up a lot. These guys did a really nice job actually making the boat go faster at that point. So this is I think that, yeah, this is the last practice before they left. Notice they're all wearing long sleeves because it was like, if any of you have ever been to San Francisco, this was like June, and it was like 50 and foggy, and it was going to be 95 and like blazing hot. So they all trained in rain jackets, which was incredibly unpleasant for them, but actually did help. Okay, so this is them sprinting. I think we were doing 6. This is either interval 5 or 6 of 6. So they're going to get faster right there. So still some funky stuff going on. I think 2-seat is the one who probably made some really good steps. I'll watch it again. It's not the one I wanted. There's one more. There's one more that I'll show you in a minute.
Matt, can you talk about how to avoid check in the boat?
Yes. Be as quiet as you can. So you can see they're pounding that boat up and down a little bit. Like if you just watch. So there's this nice water line on this boat. You can sort of see where the line is versus the water. You know, a big part of check is just that what you're doing is you're pulling yourself up and forcing yourself in to the front end. And the more we can, this is the one I want. The more you can really focus on making sure that you're driving appropriately and not worrying. This is the one they cut the back in, and not worrying so much about sort of getting into the front. If you put in that power, just let the boat come to you. It's a lot about keeping that torso up, staying on the front of the seat, rather than sort of going for that catch. Particularly late when you're putting the blade in the water, we want to have the motion to the blade in the water from here to here. It's not here, because that's a big difference in terms of what you're going to do to the boat and how the boat's going to sit and move. Okay, so this is the one where they cut the back. This is the... so this one is the one where you're going to see a little more them cut the back. And again, this is sort of the very end of the... this is the last... I think this is actually piece 6. So there's a pair out there now. So it's the same stern pair over there who's now in the pair from that other boat. So you can see like stroke seat, like how much worse she looks, right? Because she's tired. So you can just see sort of in the development of the workout.
Getting my shoulder.
Right, and if you look, like 2-seat gets grabby. They were really killing it. They were pretty tired. So 2-seat gets a little grabby, bow seat's starting to miss a little bit. So you can see what starts to happen when you get tired, and part of this is getting you to a point where you sort of react in a way that your muscles sort of know what to do, as opposed to feeling like you're not thinking about how you're rowing right now. You're thinking about absolutely going as hard as you can, and I fully realize that. So part of it is getting yourself ready so that you can perform in a way that your body does the right thing, as opposed to you're just not going to think about it. That's just, there's no way. All right, so we'll watch a couple more. So this one. So this is a start. So just so you guys get a sense of, we do the same thing in terms of cutting the back in the start. So they're doing this one in a pair. So you'll see. So this is that same stern pair. You'll see them go from the back at a pretty much vertical to swinging in. So getting the boat up out of the water.
Stroke's really throwing water.
So you can see them swing out. So the thing about video too is when you watch it, like when you're in it, like particularly like that one and the one from the sprint, like when you're in it, you're like, it doesn't, it's so much easier to watch this slow and be like, oh, I can't believe they row that way. Like it's so much easier to do it that way. And then when you're in it, you just don't necessarily get it, because you know they're all pretty good. But and so that'll happen too when I send out video and you guys slow it down. You're like, oh, I can't believe I do that. But that's normal. Like, and that's part of what you are working on, is identifying where do I end up, as opposed to where do I want to end up. So now we'll watch. So can we get volume on here, CT? Do you know? I don't think so. I think that sound is only coming off. Right? Can you see that? Okay. So this is so these are some videos from Kevin Sauer, who's the head coach at Virginia. So he does some talking here in these, and they're like little mini clips. So I'll let Kevin talk a little bit, but he'll say yes, no, like this is right, this is wrong, so you guys get a sense of like in real time how that plays out.
Square up and to the water together. Right.
So if you notice, their hands are actually pretty low as well. Not as dramatically as, so our hands low is more sort of like how Cal rows. So if you ever see any video of the Cal women, and they row really similarly.
Yep, fearless. Good, right there, good. 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 Keep doing it. Good shoulders, good, you know, missed it. Got it, yep, feel it, listen. All right, one more. Okay, now, a little cleaner.
So watch the difference to this one. So now you're looking at sort of what we saw before, where there was that two-part drive in the blue vest, sort of with the 2-seat and 4-seat in that 4, where they sort of miss the connection in the swing part. So you can see legs, and then she has to lift up because she's not keeping that pressure on the middle knuckles and keeping the horizontal pressure. So she's having to try and create more pressure later on in the drive. So it's not a function of how fast or how. This is how you don't erg.
You know, she probably pulls like a 6 I don't know.
So, it's not a function of necessarily how fast or how hard you pull, because and this is where, strength translates or doesn't. So if you watch, she actually pulls straight through. She pulls a little high, but she's pulling straight through. If you watch her wrist and her forearm, she dips a little bit right at the end, but generally that's pretty good. And if you actually, this one's interesting, if you watch her butt go to the back of the seat, that's when she drops down. One thing that Virginia does really well, but probably better than most, is they actually accelerate the boat really well through the back. So the legs start the press, and then they continue to accelerate it through the back and into the arms. Okay, so that was the drive. So we'll sort of just keep moving through the stroke. So this is another drive one. This one's shorter. So this is her letting her shoulders follow her handle.
Still a little bit slow. Just a little bit. A little more backsplash. Oh, there you go. Goes pretty slow. You gotta make sure you got a pretty big backsplash.
What do you mean by letting your shoulders follow the hand?
So watch her rotation. So you'll see, he's not sort of right behind her, but as she's see that one sort of more. You'll see that she just follows the handle a little bit right as she puts the blade in the water. She's making the circle, basically.
Missed. You got it. Got it. Barely got it. Barely got it. Got it.
So you can see he's watching that blade and seeing if that blade is in the water. He's watching for orange, right? He's watching for orange to see if she's getting orange paint or not. Okay, so then the last one from Kevin is this one about body prep. So you'll see the impact of good versus bad.
Fluid, you guys, not robotic, right? We're not robotic, it's fluid, overlap.
They worked a half slide. We worked just a little earlier to quarter slide, but.
Body over. Everything by half slide. All right, about 90%. You're looking good pull, guys.
Okay, so stroke seat and 3-seat contrast here. So stroke seat sort of looks like that 4 where she sort of moves late. And this goes to your question of check, Leela. Right, everybody wants to row in a boat with someone who rows like 3-seat because the boat is super, super quiet.
Get a hold of it, Maddie, more body angle. Keep getting it, yes, yes.
So 3-seat here is 5-seat in that, the 8, that 1.
Everything together, you can slow down a little bit. But just keep
That's what's slowing down the top quarter.
Correct. It's letting the boat continue to come to you, yeah.
Good,
So this is back to, this is that same,
good.
it's that same girl.
Good shoulders, good, no, missed it. Got it, yep, feel it, listen. All right, one more. Minute, head on.
So see how quickly their blades go in? There's a really quick change of direction to the water. There's not a, I'm going in, it's, I'm out, I'm in. Like it's a very distinct one to the other. Okay, so those are the videos I have of everybody else. I have some videos of you guys as well. But I want to take some questions first while I let that. That's my boy. That's my boy. That's Oliver. He was very excited about wearing that fuzzy hat, let me tell you. So questions from you guys before we look at some videos of you on any of that stuff. I know, it's a ton. Like, I'm throwing tons of info at you. But I want you guys to feel prepared, and I know there'll be some time to process and go back and forth, but I want to feel like you at least have some idea of what we're looking for, and then there's the steps of how to get there that we'll have to sort of walk ourselves through. So does anybody have questions about any of that stuff? Okay, so look, so it's dark outside when we row. So, okay, so for any of you who were on the team last year, like, why was he so crazy about the high-vis vests? Here we go, you'll see. So this is, we've got an 8. So we've got an 8 going to San Diego. So give you guys a sense of why Emily is the captain. Sarah's kids all think that they glow in the dark. Don't worry, we'll get there. So this is, I think, 22 or 24. I don't remember now.
22. It's warmer than that.
Nice squeeze. Keep that weight on the handle.
Mute what I'm saying. So you guys can watch. I don't have to be distracted by what I'm saying. So when everybody's got their, got their individual stuff that we're sort of working on, and obviously earlier in the season, it's just going to keep rolling through a bunch of different clips off on the same day. So the big thing that we'll start, and that we've talked about with the group that has been on the water going to San Diego, we've talked a lot about really making sure we stay connected through the squeeze. So making sure that we're actually moving the boat as we squeeze, because that's going to give you that stable platform to change direction and slide up. So we all know that putting the blade into the catch is really hard, and it is considerably harder when the boat is down to your side and then level, and then down to the other side, and then sort of down, but okay. Like that variability is really, really challenging to execute that motion well. So we started by working a lot on the squeeze, and what we want to see is, just as you watch this clip particularly, is we want to see those blades come out clean without lifting up any water. So without picking up. And so we'll see the port side, then we'll go to the starboard side. Where that blade comes out clean, if you see some water getting lifted up, that means there's either some slowing down happening while you're pulling in, or it means we're dropping down into the lap. There's a lot of things that can create that. But we want that blade to come out and then change direction. If you slow down coming into the body in some manner, or drop the hands, which will also slow you down, you'll see some of that water get lifted out.
Do you want to define squeeze for the new people?
Yeah, so squeeze is here from middle knuckle staying through here, elbow pointing down, all the way into the body. So what I tend to look for when we wear less clothes is that you can actually see a little bit of light in here, so that your elbow actually comes past the body, that we don't come to the body here, that you actually get the elbow past the body a little bit, and your wrist and forearm will stay flat. But you're actually staying here, and that is the connection in the lat, as opposed to up here in the shoulder, or out here, my shoulder is going to come up. If I do this, it's going to come straight down here and keep my shoulder down through the lat. So this looks like 26. All right, so let's go to, this is an older, I think this is the newest one, 313.
Did you video any of this on the ice day?
No, it was too cold. It was too cold.
I know.
It was too cold. Okay, so it's a little lighter, so you can probably see a little more now.
Yeah, it was all black. I had a marshmallow man.
So, a huge part of the challenge, right, is getting everybody to row the same way. That's really the biggest challenge of being effective and everybody rowing the same way. And that's what makes the boat fast. It's not 8 or 4 fast people rowing. It's 8 or 4 fast people rowing together. So this is the end of practice. See how light it is at the end of practice?
Way better now. Before it wasn't listening until 7 o'clock.
Okay, so the questions now that we've seen a little more of that. So just so all of you have a sense, so last year at Masters, which was the most probably competitive Masters that there's been in a really long time, there are more entries certainly. 80% of the boats we entered made the final, and 40% medaled. Well, over. It was like 41% and 81%. So what we're doing is a lot of really, really good stuff. See, I know. So this is where I do my disclaimer of like, I tend to say like, this is like, there's a lot of things that we can work on, but this group is a really competitive and strong group overall. So I'm excited to sort of keep pushing that on, and particularly for all of you who have been on the team before, like to sort of take where we were and continue to build upon that. So that's sort of all I had scheduled. I wanted to leave some time to chat a little bit, and I know people have to run off to work.